All right. We are connecting to YouTube, and there we are. So, welcome everyone. Today we are talking about belief, and the guest speaker is Dr. Rushton Johnson from Pellissippi State. And of course, his famous bow tie. Liz Taylor, if you're able to watch this, we're sure that this is just an absolute highlight for you. So, Dr. Rushton Johnson, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Scotty?
Good, good. Hope you're staying warm, right?
Yeah, trying to. It's I think in the 30s here where I am in Tennessee. So yeah, trying my best.
Good. Yeah, and you're kind of in the mountains too, so I guess it's a little chillier as well with the wind and stuff, right?
Yeah, it is. There's actually forecasted snow on Sunday, so we'll see how that works out.
Every time I think of snow, I always remember my senior year in college, the night before Obama's inauguration, we had
Ah,
snowfall, and then I woke up and campus was covered with snowbombas. Like, oh, okay, cool.
yeah,
So
Obama.
yeah, so I don't know, it was brilliant. Whoever did that overnight, I was like, oh, that's smart. So let's go ahead and jump into who are you as a person?
Who am I as a person?
Yeah.
Wow, big question. So I've been working in higher education for about 20 plus years.
Hmm.
I Yeah, I work at Pellissippi State Community College, as you know, and I serve as Vice President of Student Affairs. And so in my portfolio of responsibilities, I have the things that you would, typically think of in student affairs or student services, admissions, recruitment, financial aid, counseling, advising, student activities, student conduct, career services, and a host of other responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so I am working in what I believe to be my passion. I'm in a space that I enjoy, that I'm excited about, and particularly working with community college students because it's all about access to educational opportunities that have the potential to change the trajectory of lives. Apart from what I do professionally, I'm actively involved in my community. I have enjoyed working with Meals on Wheels, delivering meals to senior citizens. I also volunteer with my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I serve as director of college brother affairs, and so I'm engaged in leadership development and chapter development with chapters of my fraternity across the southern region. I am an avid volleyball enthusiast, so I play in several leagues. Of course, prior to pandemic, things have been a real different now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so now that I have finished my last formal engagement with education, I'm able to do more reading and get caught up on all of the programming that I have missed. And so I've been doing a lot of binge watching Netflix and Amazon Prime. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Nice. I feel like one of the big things is, you've had some journeys in life to kind of figure out various avenues, various things that you believe in, obviously becoming or earning your PhD, becoming an educator, but then at the same time saying, all right, here's Meals on Wheels, volleyball, and of course we met through HBS Online. You're wearing the little blazer. It looks like, I think is that the Harvard one? Kind of.
Yeah, this is Harvard Extension School.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. I was gonna say it looks a little different. So
This is
yeah,
the
yeah.
Extension
So
School, yeah, Shield.
okay, yeah, and then your bow tie, HU. So yeah, and so clearly, education has always been a big part of your life. I think it's just one of those things where a lot of people think of education as you learn stuff and then you get to a certain degree and then there you are. You're taking a step further saying, no, 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 it's a cycle. Let me learn this stuff so I can turn it around and say, okay, who else needs to learn this stuff? Like you mentioned, student affairs, financial aid. You probably have a lot of first generation students, kids from small towns. I was kind of like that. I grew up semi poor. So obviously someone like you would have been and people like you, not would have been, but were a big boost for me to be able to say, I have no idea what's going on. There's no one anywhere in my network, anywhere in my vicinity who can help me. And people like you were saying, oh, well, fill out this form. When you're done, fill out this form, or just go to this link, read this, and stuff like that. And so, really want to applaud you for that. Anyone watching, I'm sure, would be able to think of a teacher or an educator, a mentor, a coach, someone who did a lot of the similar things that you do. So, I guess we're here to talk about belief.
Mhm.
I imagine a lot of what you do probably does come from some form of belief, right?
Yeah, it does. And just a little more about my background and how I think, fundamentally what I believe and perhaps my philosophy as a person and how that has informed how I think about education has to do with the fact, Scotty,
Mhm.
that I am from a working class neighborhood in Bessemer, Alabama, which is a suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. And, my maternal grandfather and grandmother did not finish high school. And, that was during a time where that was okay. And you could
Yeah.
earn a respectable living, not, having earned a high school diploma or much less gone to college. But my grandfather, he dropped out of school around third or fourth grade. And, my grandmother, she got to the 11th grade, I think.
Mhm.
And she, in fact, she was very literate, but she, in fact, taught him how to read using the newspaper.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, and so he worked at the local pipe foundry in our community. It was a steel plant, and he, on the side, on weekends, did some moonlighting, working with a general contractor on construction. And so eventually he transitioned to do that full time and actually started his own business. And so he became a
Okay.
licensed general contractor, building and improving homes. And so, so seeing his example and being a part of our family culture, where he was insistent on hard work, dedication, education, though he himself did not have the opportunity to receive a formal education, he was insistent that all 10 of his children, my mother being the oldest, would not only finish high school, but would go to college. And so I can say that all of his children did receive at least an associate's degree. So I had the benefit of those examples to even begin to imagine what was possible for myself.
Yeah.
And now I will say, I think, so I would describe myself as I was a smart boy. And where I grew up, smart brown boys weren't popular. So I had to navigate those spaces because,
Mhm.
I remember waking up in the morning, getting on the bus and going to school and not seeing my friends until the end of the day when I got back on the bus
Yeah.
to go home. So, but yeah, it's those values that were instilled, in me as a youth, and seeing some examples around me that helped me begin to imagine or believe the possibilities for myself. Now, I will say, when I went to college, I, had in my mind that I was going to be a doctor, I was going to major in biology, and that was what I was going to do. And a
Yeah.
lot of that, decision had to do with not being exposed to possibilities. And so, what I can appreciate about going to the small private residential liberal arts college that I did was that they really challenged me to think outside of the box and to really imagine what was possible for myself. And it was a difficult road because it was an environment where there were very few African American students. So I had to sort of navigate that space.
Yeah.
And, I had to, confront the fact that, biology and medicine just wasn't it for me. And so having the courage to say, so the idea of being a doctor is attractive, but this isn't really what I'm passionate about. And so I found my passion in the social sciences. Um, and I was a work study student in the student affairs office and was really heavily influenced by my current dean of students,
Yeah.
and then begin to imagine how, what I was learning in my curriculum, in the social sciences could align with something that I could imagine myself doing and enjoying and being impactful and good at, coming together. So that's, sort of where I then began, to form my idea of what I might do vocationally and professionally. And so I would share with you, finally, I think, philosophically, what I think has informed what I believe. It may sound cliche, but it really has to do with the Declaration of Independence, right?
Mm.
And in the preamble, where it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights,
Yeah.
that it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so, of course, the historical caveat, is that when that document was penned, it didn't necessarily include people like me.
Yeah.
But that makes it no less true for me and all people. So fundamentally, I believe that education is a human right. And so I am especially excited to be working in the community college space, because the mission of the community college is about access. It is about giving, every person who is earnestly and sincerely interested in having an education the opportunity to have one.
Yeah.
So what I believe fundamentally, and this really sort of, it centers what I do professionally and even what I do civically, is that education is a human right.
Yeah. And we often talk about in society life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Hmm.
And how do you reach happiness? Usually, a stable job, or at least being able to do stuff that you want, which probably does come from having a stable job, or at least knowing that you have options. And education, like you said, being a human right. In the U.S., we were very early on. At least to select groups, we were committed to universal education to select groups, and then we started adding more and more people until eventually people like you, people like me, women, um, Native Americans, they were able to start going to schools largely of their choosing. As flawed as our system remains today, there is still it's not so much, okay, you can't come into this building, at least for public schools, as long as you're paying your taxes in this school district or something. Then it's like, well, okay, technically, you are allowed in. So I think, like you said, these documents, as flawed as the men pinning these were, they at least had the foresight to recognize, okay, there is there is a bunch of these, these truths. They're self-evident, these human rights, these universal rights. And obviously from there, as the nation evolved, as these documents evolved, people like me and you, women, others, start getting these opportunities. And for you to talk about, you're in the community college space. I think one really important thing is, um, we're talking about education. You're saying to a lot of kids, all right, you might not be going to those top schools, but that's okay. Your path, you just need to get this first stepping stone, and then that next stepping stone. So don't worry about, are you going to this school or that school yet, because it's a lifelong process. I guess if I were a student coming to you saying, hey, what about after community college? It's like, I didn't know I was supposed to go to college, and Dr. Johnson, you helped me get into college, and I'm about to graduate. But what's next? Because I'm already a step ahead of everyone in my family. For the first time, my family's gonna have their name on a diploma. I don't care about my name on a diploma. My family's name is gonna be on it. But what do I do once I get my associates?
Yeah, well, I think, nowadays what we're talking about in education is lifelong learning
Mhm.
and pathways,
Yeah.
where instead of thinking about education as a one-off, you earn a credential and then you're done, it is about committing to a life of learning. And so when you think about, the world in which we live,
Mhm.
there is new information and new knowledge created every day. And so it's practically, as soon as you earn a credential, it's almost outdated, especially in this world of technology and advances that we see happening. And so it is less about education as a one-off, but as a pathway, and understanding how earning the next credential aligns with your life goals. So, and it may be your life goal to earn an associate's degree and to acquire a particular job and to earn at a particular level, and that's satisfying for you. And if that is, then there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want the opportunity to have more impact, advance in your job, then here is a pathway laid out for you that shows you how you can meet those objectives for yourself, as you progress along this pathway that's laid out. And a lot of that reflects and mirrors my own experience. So, as you shared earlier, I earned a terminal degree at the age of 26. So I started as a freshman in 1990, and I'm dating myself here. And I was continuously enrolled every fall and spring and most summers until 1999. So I went straight through and didn't stop. And so I came back around after working, 12, 13, 14 years, recognizing that I needed to retool, and that there were more competencies that I needed to continue to progress along my pathway. And so that's, that how I found Harvard, because, when I was coming out of high school, going anywhere out of state for me to any school, you may as well have been inviting me to go to Mars. I mean, it just was more than my brain could comprehend. I mean, I just couldn't imagine it, right? And so, and I don't know if I would have been competitive enough to get in anyway. So, to a school like Harvard, but and so I started with the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Actually, there was an institute for senior level administrators. And by this time I had made vice president, and a 2-week intensive, institute, for educational administrators. And it really sort of reactivated my, sort of love for the academy. And I thought, I need to figure out how I can get what I believe I need to go to the next level. And for me, eventually that will be community college president. So as I, began to sort of take stock in what I needed or what I would need to be competitive for jobs like that, I thought, my background is in the social sciences. I have an undergraduate degree in sociology and psychology. I have a master's degree in counseling, a doctorate in higher ed administration, but I'm lacking management science. I mean, I need to understand how to manage people in an organization, because that's a huge part of what you will do as a chief executive. And that's how I found the Harvard Business School. And so it wasn't practical for me to quit working and enroll in an MBA program. So HBX, or Harvard Business School Online now, was perfect for me, because I could earn a credential that would demonstrate that I had gained competencies in business. And so then I learned about the partnership between the Harvard Extension School and the Harvard Business School for the ALM in management. And I thought, this is perfect, because I can go part-time. The majority of the courses are online. The residency requirement is only 16 hours. I thought, this is what I need. This will meet my needs perfectly. And so I'm, proud to say that I finished my last course in the fall. And so I'll actually March, virtual or otherwise, in person or virtual, in the spring. But so that's my own sort of example of, lifelong learning and understanding that education is about a process. It's a journey. It's a pathway wherein you can get your needs met to do what you want to do in the world. And so that's what I try to share with students that come into the community college space. Some come for certificates in the skilled trades, and that's fine. Others come for an associate's degree, and that's all they want. Others come to get their start and later transfer. But it's all about imagining what is possible for you. If you want more, more is possible.
Yeah.
And so fundamentally, what do you believe and how do you navigate the spaces that you're in to achieve what you imagine for yourself? And so I just try to share my own life example to motivate, encourage, and inspire the students that I work with to see what is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's kind of like saying you get on a bus, you don't have to go to the final destination. You can maybe go along and be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get off here. I'll take a different bus, because in the end, a lot of it really is more you got on this bus, it took you somewhere where you could start making better decisions, or
Yeah.
maybe you had more options. So I do kind of want to backtrack a bit. You mentioned, growing up in a small town just outside of Birmingham. For a lot of people who know me, this won't be surprising, but when I've driven through Alabama, there's a town called Leeds. I stopped by. In fact, you would actually have to detour a bit. Um, and it's like, oh, why would you detour for a small random town in Alabama? And for me, it was, well, Charles Barkley was born there. He
Yes.
grew up there.
Yes.
So, for me, to go there, I spent an entire afternoon just looking around. Here's the high school he went to. It's a very small school and all that. Obviously, he's put a lot of money back in. There's stories about him bringing his NBA friends and all his other celebrity friends and whoever's back to town just to hang out, give the kids an example. Putting money in so they have the structure needed. And I accidentally came across the house where he grew up, the house he bought for his grandmother, the church he grew up with, the basketball courts where, the stories where he said, oh, we'd go and steal cake, jump over fences. And a couple of the locals showed me around and I was like, oh, whoa, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I even got to go to the shop where he would always stop by for his favorite key lime pie. And for me growing up in other parts of the South, I imagine that, since these were pretty familiar to me in some way, your town was probably very similar. It was maybe, a few hundred, few thousand people, um, possibly segregated and very clearly segregated with here's a railroad that runs through, or here's a tree line, or here's a specific road that cuts through. And then here's the other part of town. I guess for you, was that the case or was it different?
The community that I lived in, it's a relatively small working class community in the city of Bessemer, which is considered to be a suburb of Birmingham. And it was
Okay,
called,
so you're a little closer in then.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It was called the Pipe Shop because it was in the shadows of the local pipe foundry. I mean, literally my grandparents' house, which we spent the majority of our time there because my grandmother, she was a homemaker because she had 10 children. And so it was decided early on that, it was not practical for her to work. And my grandfather earned, a decent living where he could provide for, the family. My parents, my mother, her first job was, at Sears Roebuck, and she eventually went to community college and earned an associate's degree and became a professional nurse. And my father, he was in the trades, skilled trade. I mean, he was a decorated veteran, from the Vietnam War, was in the Army. And when he came out of the Army using the GI Bill, he was able to get education at the local community college. He had an injury, so he had to figure out something else to do. So he became a master barber, cosmetologist, opened a business, etc. So, that to say, my family largely we were working class people. We, our family center was in the pipe shop, which was an African American community. And while we didn't necessarily have a railroad that divided us, the pipe shop was a very defined geographic space. And I shared with you that, if you know about the history in the South, with segregation, the courts got involved and ordered the desegregation of schools all across the South. And that impacted our community. So for elementary school 1 through 7, I attended the neighborhood school in the pipe shop, but then from 8 on, we had to be bused to school in another community. And I remember the first day that I attended the school that we were bused to, the junior high school.
Yeah.
And having my classmates learn that I was from the pipe shop, and this has stuck with me all these years. What she said was, nothing good comes out of the pipe shop.
Oh man.
And I thought, wow. Like, well, now for me, the pipe shop was baseball in the streets, hide and go seek. It was, Mr. Kelly bringing out a watermelon and cutting it and sharing it with all the neighborhood kids. I mean, it was
Amazing.
my grandparents' house being the center of the neighborhood. It was, walking to the, package store. It was skateboard. I mean, it was, it, for me, it was, it was heaven, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that we were not a slice of heaven on earth until somebody else told me, right?
Mhm.
And so that to say, I spent a lot of my time trying to, sort of live out of or move away from this label that had put on me as not being good simply because I came from where I came from.
Mhm.
And I will say, Scotty, a lot of what I have, so my decision, to go to Harvard, has to do with what I believe will provide me the highest quality of preparation for what I want to do. But it is also to be an example for that brown boy or girl who thinks Harvard is beyond their reach, to say, I know a person that legitimately bears the badge of a Harvard man, right?
Yeah.
So that they can say, well, if it's possible for him, just like I imagine seeing Kamala Harris as the first woman of color to be vice president of the United States, or Barack Obama to be the first man of color to be president of the United States, that's
Yeah.
had an impact on what brown boys and girls think about what is possible for them. So as I work with students in the community college space, that's a badge of honor for me, because it says, as a boy, I didn't think this was possible for me. This
Yeah.
was beyond what I could comprehend as something that I would ever be able to do. And now, after all this time, here I am having achieved the thing that I once thought was impossible. So
Yeah.
I share that as an example with them to say, whatever you imagine for yourself, it is possible. It is about figuring out what is the next move you need to make towards realizing your dreams, or what you imagine is possible for yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a little bit about how, my sort of neighborhood dynamic, coming from the South, I was very aware of, um, the segregation and its impact on opportunity. But I was fortunate enough to be in a family culture where we were pushed and encouraged, and there were real life examples around me that allowed me to imagine beyond what I otherwise could have imagined. And then, of course, as I went out into the world on my own and was exposed, then I began to imagine for myself, and working really intentionally to align my, passions, first of all, to be courageous enough to say, this is what I want to do, right? This is what I get excited about, what I feel passionate about and committed to. And if I was not paid a dime, right,
Yeah.
could I wake up and be excited to do it? And so I found that, and I'm fortunate in that way. So having the courage, I think, in terms of advice that I would give people is, have the courage to be honest with yourself about what you're excited about, and then pursue that. Because it becomes less about how much money you make, but then it becomes more about the impact that you can have. I mean, now, as a practical matter, we all need to make money, right, and earn a living to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
But I don't think that if your motivation is entirely about what you earn, then I think you will enjoy the work less, and perhaps have less of an impact than you would in pursuing something that you were really genuinely excited about and passionate about. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great because a lot of times as we get older, we kind of forget the dreams we had growing up. We let the world and other people tell us what they think we should be. And for you to come on and say, hey, look, right here, I'm wearing that Harvard badge, here's HU.
Yeah.
I think when I was in undergrad, and then even after, I would volunteer at a youth center near Duke, called the Emily K Center, and it was built by Coach K, named after his mom, Emily Krzyzewski Center. And all the students there, I would mentor them, tutor them, stuff like that. We were told, all of us, the first day we sign up to volunteer, even if we were already doing this, just as a reminder, every time you come, please wear something from your school. And I remember someone was asking, isn't that kind of bragging? And the person replied, well, you're enrolled there, it's fact, it's truth, right? You earned it.
Mm-hmm.
And these kids don't think you're bragging. These kids think of it as, whoa, you mean I can be at that school too? Because these kids are, for the first time, seeing someone from Duke, UNC, NC Central, whatever school you're wearing, there's for the first time that they're trying to help these kids get into those schools. So it's not, oh, yeah, it's just some random entity. It's, they want me to go to their school. They're happy that I got this full ride, but disappointed that it's a full ride to the rival school, but they're still happy in
Yeah.
the end. And, obviously I had a couple kids give me a hard time and say, hey, Scotty, I got a full ride. Guess where I'm going? Oh, where are you going? Carolina. We're going to beach next year. Oh, right.
Yeah.
But, of
Right.
course, the excitement they have when they realize, oh my God, I get to be where Michael Jordan went to school,
Yeah.
Vince Carter, and then later, start some kids saying Duke, it's like, wow, Grant Hill was here, Zion Williamson.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those things that, we talk about branding a lot in the real world, in the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wearing Nike or not? I think someone once said that one of the most brilliant things done by fashion companies was convincing you that you should wear their brand and their logo.
Mm-hmm.
And you know to be able to go around and show these kids, because for a lot of us, our skin color, our genetics, it's very visible and there's no getting around it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously for you coming on camera with this HU bow tie, with the with the Harvard shield right there, you're really making a conscious effort to say, hey, look, yeah, look at my skin color, recognize, think about everything you think about me as a person, and what does this tell you? Does this tell you that I achieved, or does this flip your stereotypes? And obviously your lifelong evolution has just
Mm-hmm.
been a path of, okay, here's who I am, coming from the pipe shop, and then evolving and eventually saying, hey, look, I am an example. So it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I think I can appreciate you talking about mentoring, Scotty, because that is so important. Having relationships with youth and being, just a living example of what is possible for them. So having exposure to people who represent what is possible for them to achieve so that it doesn't seem so distant and out of reach for
Yeah.
them, I think is so important. And you're right. I think, a lot of, so I wear this insignia proudly because I think, for one, some of the reactions that I get, are interesting because
Yeah.
people, they don't expect, in fact, I had someone ask me a really challenging question, whether or not I was an actual legitimate student at Harvard, which I just found interesting. It was just like, well, now, are you just wearing that T-shirt because you like Harvard, or are you an actual student? Or I was just like, no, I'm actually a student at Harvard.
Yeah.
And so sort of this, implicit bias is a real thing that we have to deal with in the world. I have encountered it and I continue to encounter it, but it gives me then an opportunity, to challenge, what people in their mind perceive what is possible for me, which is, it is so interesting. People are very eager to limit what is possible for me. And I
Yeah.
like the experience of saying, you don't get to write the script for me. In fact, I do that. And so yes, I am, and not only that, but this is degree number 4. So I have already earned 2 advanced degrees, but decided to go back and decided to go back to the place where I thought could give me the best preparation for what I want to do. And so it's really opened an opportunity for me to really engage people with biases that unfortunately limit opportunity and negatively impact what so many are able to believe for themselves. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it is again, it's not just for me, but I do this because I want people who look like me to see that it is also possible for them. So then in that small way, they can feel encouraged to dream and imagine what is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where, even something as simple as a diploma. Most of us who do get into college are coming from backgrounds where we're thinking, yeah, I want to see my name on a diploma. Then you have a smaller number who are thinking, I want to see my family's name on the diploma for the first time. And I imagine, and this is something that doesn't happen. I wouldn't know, but I'm getting the feeling that for a lot of African Americans, a lot of brown people, getting the diploma is also, it's not just here's my family's name for the first time, but also here's my people getting another diploma to say, yeah, we were stripped away from our homeland, our culture, our identity. But even though we're in a flawed system, it's doing what it can, but it's still flawed, and we're still able to succeed in this system. And I think, the the concept of HBCUs first went started in Reconstruction, and then unfortunately when we ended that prematurely, there were a lot of people saying we need to have our own schools because we're not being allowed into the other schools. And now you have some HBCUs that are actually a majority white, from what I've seen. You have some HBCUs that are still majority black, but in the end, they all maintain that heritage. A lot of people get the wrong idea of, oh, you have to be black to go there. It's like, no, we're saying our roots are black, but it's not because we were black. It was because here's a school for people who were being denied education at the time, primarily black. But look, if you want an education, we're here for you. And I guess the tricky part is how many are there, because I've seen 101 to 107. Based on my research, I think it's 105.
Mhm.
And some of it is, some of them are just a med school. So it's like, do you count that as an HBCU? Some of them are, they're very closely related, but they're not quite, they're not quite from the original 100 some.
Mhm.
So, whatever the case is, clearly that's a significant number. And, it's just interesting to me that in the end, something that came from I guess a tragic necessity has turned into a great symbol for so many millions of students.
Yeah, it is. The history in the United States, it is very storied around race and segregation. And you are correct. HBCUs were created out of necessity. It was the separate but equal is okay, right? That we know was struck down by Brown versus Board. But people of African descent were not allowed to, or were not given access to educational institutions, and they were reserved exclusively for whites. So the HBCU was necessary. And I believe we still need the HBCUs today. When you think about, the fact that systemic racism still does exist, we do still have implicit biases that deny opportunity for all. I think, HBCUs are keepers of, I think, culture, and they represent the other part of the story that is not told often. They provide, I think, an environment that nurtures and affirms uh, students that attend in ways that are important and that matter. So I think we absolutely need to continue to support and fund and have historically Black colleges and universities. Now, in a utopian society, HBCUs would not be necessary. But
Yeah.
I think, given where we are, and so understand, we are barely 50 years removed from the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. It was only a couple of years ago that we commemorated the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. So, when you think about it, the generation that went through that is still alive today. And
Yeah.
so I think, while we have made progress, we've elected our first African American president and now vice president. We have seen the upward mobility of people of color in all different facets of society. There is still a significant portion of the population that suffers from opportunity structures that disadvantage them. So we look at income inequality, and we look at the median income for Black households versus white households. We look at leadership that's represented across Fortune 500 companies. It goes on and on and on. There's still work, that we have to do. And so to ensure that the kind of opportunity that, you know, that people of color deserve is available to them, we will need the historically Black college and university. So until we get to the point where we see outcomes, equitable outcomes, but we access to education as well as equitable outcomes in terms of earning credentials, then we'll continue to need these cultural educational centers that focus on what people of color need to not only survive, but also to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me when Obama was first elected, or I guess, yeah, November '08 when he was, or I guess at least the popular vote came in and he had won. Um, I remember I was talking to a classmate and I was saying, I don't get it. He hasn't been sworn in. It's not like he's the first Black guy to achieve this and that. I wasn't trying to put him down. It's more, I was thinking, why is it that this celebration is so much bigger than other things? And he was saying, Scotty, I know you don't get it. So, I'm not mad or anything, but think of it this way. My grandfather was born, I think he said it was like the 20s or something like that. Basically, it was like my grandfather was born at that time, and the depression, this and that, World War II, and even in the military, fighting abroad in France and Italy, thinking, why is it that the Europeans are treating me better than my own people? And come home, I miss out on the GI Bill and this and that, and then all the lynchings you hear about throughout all the decades, then the 50s, 60s, 70s. And then, he was saying, yeah. And so you mentioned Dr. King. So, imagine to some degree, you probably imagine what it was like for my grandfather, all my family, some of my older uncles who were born by then to be able to say, they just killed possibly the greatest Black man we have right now. But then you have Nelson Mandela and he's being jailed. And he was just kind of explaining, for his grandparents' generation, for his parents' generation, and to some degree, people my generation, for them it always felt like kind of everyone's being cut down as soon as they got to a position of affecting change. And then he was saying, for especially the grandparents' generation, some who are still alive from the great grandparents' generation somehow, he was saying, for them, it's kind of like at some point they might have already given up on ever saying, okay, here's a somewhat fair life. And, in their waning years, here's someone who was able to climb on their shoulders and say, I want to do this. And then now he's in the White House. And okay, so he's not physically there yet, Scotty, but that's how far we've come. And for us, it's not just, oh, he's Black, but it's also the joy that our grandparents, our great grandparents finally have, our parents, the despair, that cloud was kind of lifting finally. And for me, it was like, that was the first time I started to kind of understand the whole, like you said, yeah, in a utopian world, at some point it was be like, oh, someone got elected. We don't care what color he is. We don't care what gender he or she or they are, is, I guess. But he was saying, yeah, but that's the thing. This is the first time. So this is a big deal. And yeah, the second, third, fourth, we'll just be like, okay, hey, cool, great. Congrats. But the first one, it's kind of saying we finally broken through in some way. And just kind of, here's the legacy of what happened, what used to be, and here is a new frontier for possibility. So so that was really interesting for me. And like you said, in utopian world, we don't need HBCUs anymore. It's more just, oh, by the way, did you know that Duke has Methodist roots? Did you know that NC Central has HBCU roots? Did you know this and that? And it's more an interesting fact as opposed to a realistic solution to a tragic necessity. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
yeah, I do think that with what has happened, we're in a global pandemic, and
Mhm.
we've seen a lot of civic and political unrest here in the United States, and I would say even across the world, that I think was precipitated and prompted by what we all witnessed um, in the killing of George Floyd, and that surfaced a lot of what was undersurfaced in terms of frustration that African American men and women were feeling and experiencing in their lived experiences every day. And so when we all were sort of shuttered in out of an abundance of caution around COVID-19 and all watching our television screens, we got to see that and confront face to face the realities of many Black and Brown people, things that frankly we've been saying, for years. And so a lot of folks got to see that and were rightly appalled by it and roundly rebuked the system for these, sort of, evils that have been festering. So it is, that as an example of, disparate treatment, disparities in access to opportunity to have, a life of happiness, to pursue happiness.
Right.
And so I think about, opportunity structures. And so, when you talk about systemic racism, it is less about what individuals are doing or what individual intent or motivations are, but it's about the systems that we have that result in disparate outcomes. And so when you take, for example, how we fund our school districts, it's based upon property taxes. Well, when you have a banking system that undervalues properties in predominantly African American communities or communities where, Black and Brown people live, then the tax base is going to be smaller, which means the school district is going to have fewer funds to buy the resources that are needed to properly educate the
Mhm.
children. So they then are not receiving the quality of education that students who live in other districts are, because their properties are valued higher. Though if you put them side by side, pound for pound, they should be valued similarly. But because of where the property is situated, it's undervalued, which makes fewer resources available. So when it comes to standardized testing, well, who do you think is going to perform better? And if that's the basis for college admission and scholarship, well, who's going to get into the top institutions and get the top scholarships? So it is a system that disadvantages um, people who are Black and Brown based upon geographically where they are situated by zip code. So that is fundamentally unfair.
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot happening, even at Harvard. Harvard has committed that no person will be denied the opportunity to attend Howard because they can't afford it. So if they, if they otherwise earn the opportunity to attend, then Harvard is committed to ensuring that they then are financially sort of able to pay the tuition. And we've seen other programs designed to address some of the systemic problems that produce these disparate outcomes. So then the work that I'm involved in becomes even, I think, more important because it is about helping folks navigate these spaces and structures and continue to believe what is possible for them. And it's a bit more of a challenge, but it's something that can be achieved. And so having examples like you, like me, who are mentoring and working in the community, intentionally addressing some of the gaps that we see in support, it's important. Um, and I think it ultimately, we all benefit because if our communities are healthy and whole, then our cities are healthy and whole, counties and states, and our nation. So if we address these problems with the least of these, we all benefit. So the work becomes even more important.
Yeah. I'm amazed because just now for the first time I understood, and I realize this is a very big simplification, but when you talk about black kids on the SAT getting extra 200 points or whatever, obviously that's not just that's not all of affirmative action, but just kind of that simplification. I suddenly now understand why, because I mean, yeah, I'm not going to open the whole can of worms because we haven't gone on for a while, but suddenly I'm thinking, wait, so that a lot of things suddenly make sense to me. Why, we have areas that that are open to gentrification. We have areas that, we're led to kind of think, oh, this place is more dangerous or this and that. Because some of it is the opportunities are being stripped away. Some of it is they're being actively minimized. Some of it is they're just being prevented from coming in. And, eventually, you either have to move out or you just run out of money or, you get bought out or just whatever the case is. And obviously from their, societal assumptions, for example, is it more dangerous because, we send more cops or, oh, that's far away. So, it's harder for social services to go in or this and that. But then on top of that, the stress of, do I have money versus, oh man, I have 3 yachts. Do I sell one or not?
Yeah,
And those are very different stresses. So,
very different.
but yeah, I just wanted to, like I said, I don't want to open a whole new can of worms.
Yeah.
I just want to at least outline. Those are some things that ran through my mind. And just kind of for the first time, making the connection between property values, banking systems,
Yes.
and how that impacts school.
Yep.
And even, from their affirmative action. So, I guess, we've talked about how, what's impacted your life, how you've grown, evolved, what's driven you all these years, how you want to impact others, how you have impacted others. Um, I guess, to start closing out, do you have any last words, and who would you like to thank for, your journey?
Um, no, I think we've probably covered all that I would say. So no last words.
Mhm.
But I do just want to underscore, as I begin to acknowledge some of the people that have had an influence on me, I just want to underscore the importance of having mentors, mentorship, and examples for those who are under-resourced and underprivileged, who don't have access. It is so important for them to have examples that look like them, to help them begin to imagine what is possible for them and to believe that they can in fact achieve. So I just would encourage all of us who have been so privileged to have obtained our credentials and our jobs. As you think about ways in which you can give back, please consider mentorship and there are many organizations that you can associate with or who will create opportunities for you to do just that. But I would like to thank, I mean, my mother, who was probably my biggest champion and cheerleader, who told me that anything that I wanted to do was possible, and helped me navigate, all of the obstacles and the hurdles and the spaces. She is, passed away, but I believe that she is probably the biggest influence on me getting to where I am today. Also, my sister, my older sister, Kim, she, um, yeah, she just her support and, love as a big sister has been so important. She has always shown up and supported everything that I have done. And I'm just eternally grateful for knowing that I could always look up and see that she will either be in the audience or, she will be helping me to organize or plan or do whatever harebrained shenanigans I come up with in pursuit of what I dream for myself. And then quickly, colleague, Jacqueline Curry, she is, everyone needs that friend who will tell you like it is. And so she is one who will give me truth, but do so with grace and will give me the space to process it and then help me move forward. So she is that person that I have that really serves as a compass for myself. And then professionally, I would say my undergraduate dean of students, Dudley Long, or vice president for student affairs, I should say is her proper title. She had a big part to play in my ultimate decision to pursue this particular vocational pathway. As I sorted through me not, pursuing medicine and that biology wasn't it, she helped me to sort of figure out that I could work with college students and college student affairs and be impactful. And then a couple of students, my first job that really allowed me to pour into them and allowed me to see the impact that I could have on college students, Anwar Arif and Katisha Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, hugely important. And then, Scotty, I'd like to thank you for creating this opportunity to share my own story and experience, and the connection that you, Liz, and I, have maintained since coming through core. We're the September 2015 cohort, I think.
Yeah.
We're
I think
some
you
of
were
the
first,
the
first
OGs.
international core or something.
Yeah, we were like the second cohort, I think, to come through.
Yeah.
So we're part of the OGs.
Yeah. Going way back.
From way
Yeah,
back.
we missed our 5-year reunion, actually. I just realized.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And like, because I was telling you, yeah, we'll keep it a little shorter, and oh wait, it's gone a little longer. But I appreciate you taking the time to tell me all these things, and in fact, your PhD already worked today because, like I said, I suddenly, for the first time, I'm making a connection between property values, the banking system, and then why we had this perception that oh, he's getting 200 points just because he's black. It's like, well, because this whole system
Yes.
leads to this one thing called the SAT, and so I think it is obviously like you said, trying to learn, it's a lifelong process, for you to say, I need to be educated, but then I need to give back. And I'm sitting here thinking, I went to Duke, and oh wow, what, I just learned something new. It's like,
Yeah,
I mean, obviously I know there's a lot I don't know, but
absolutely.
then to be able to come across this gym, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
all right, well, now I better, I understand this better. So, uh, put that to use in some way. So, Dr. Rushton Johnson, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Best of luck with everything you're doing at Pellissippi State. Hope you're staying warm this weekend. Hope you enjoy the snow tomorrow.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, snow and Kamala does not go together as well as snow and Obama. So you'll have
Yeah.
to think of a new portmanteau, I guess. But
Yeah. We have to come up with
um,
something else.
yeah. But congrats to you, your family, on everything you've achieved, your students, your school, and all that. And definitely looking forward to having you come on again. So, uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll bring you back as soon as I figure out, the future schedule. So,
Yes. I'd love
thank
to
you
come
for
back.
coming on.
You're welcome.
And